Okay, man, let's get some more web dev going on. So, see? Yep. Okay, I just finished chapter 8 and I was about to go in chapter 9. So, and is something wrong with you, my man? Huh. Okay. Then we have forms. It didn't take long for the web to shift from a network of pages to read to a place where you went to get things done, making purchases, booking plane tickets, signing petitions, searching a site, posting a tweet. The list goes on. All of these interactions are handled by forms. In fact, in response to the shift from page to application, HTML5 introduction a bonanza of new form controls and attributes that make it easier for users to fill out forms and for developers to create them. Tasks that have traditionally relied on JavaScript may be handled by markup and native browser behavior alone. HTML5 introduces a number of new form related elements, 13 new input types. Ooh, okay, many attributes. Some of these features are waiting for browser implementations to catch up, so I will be sure to note which controls may not be universally supported. This chapter introduces web forms, how they work, and the markup used to create them. I'll also briefly discuss the importance of web form design, how forms work. There are two parts to a working form. The first part is the form that you see on the page itself, that is created using HTML markup. Forms are made up of buttons, input fields, and drop-down menus, collectively known as form controls, used to collect information from the user. Yeah. Forms may also contain Forms may also contain text and other elements. The other component of a web form is an application or script on the server that processes the information collected by the form and returns an appropriate response. It's what makes it's what makes the form work. In other words, posting an HTML document with forms elements isn't enough. Posting an HTML document with form elements isn't enough. Web applications and scripts require programming know-how that is beyond the scope of this book. But getting your forms to work sidebar later in this chapter provides some options for getting the scripts you need. Okay. Okay, the other component. Create response. Okay. From data entry to response. If you are going to be creating web forms, it is beneficial to understand what is happening behind the scenes. This example traces the steps of a transaction using a simple form. This example traces the steps of a transaction using a simple form that gathers names and email addresses for a mailing list. Okay, this example traces the steps of a transaction using a simple form that gathers names and email addresses for a mailing list. However, it is typical of the process for many forms. It is typical of the process for many forms. Okay. Your visitor, let's call her Sally, opens the page with a web form in the browser window. The browser sees the form. The browser sees the form control in the markup and renders them with the appropriate form controls on the page, including two text entry fields and a submit button. Okay. Sally would like to sign up for the Sally would like to sign up for this mailing list, so she enters her name and email into the fields and submits the form by hitting the submit button. The browser collects a The browser collects the information she entered, encodes it, see the sidebar, and sends it to the web application. Okay, what is encoding? Okay, a word about encoding. Form data is encoded using the same method used for URLs, in which spaces and other characters are not permitted are translated into their hexadecimal equivalent. Okay, 20. For example, Each space character in the collection form data is represented by the character string %20, and a slash character is replaced by %2f. You don't need to worry about this. The browser handles it automatically. That is interesting. The web application accepts the information and processes it, that is, does whatever it is programmed to do with it. In this example, the name and email address are added to a database. The web application also returns the response. Okay. The kind of response sent back depends on the content and purpose of the form. Here the response is a simple web page that contains a thank you for signing up for the mailing list. Other applications might respond by reloading the HTML form page with updated information, by moving the users onto another related form page, or by issuing an error message if the form is not filled out correctly, to name only a few examples. Okay. The server sends the web application's response back to the browser window where it is displayed. Sally can see that the form worked and that she has been added to the mailing list. The form element. Interactive form. Forms are added to web pages using, no surprise here, the form element. Okay. The form element is a container of all the content of the form, including some numbers of, man, I don't feel too good. Wait. Okay, boys, we are back. Should I think I should just shift it this side. Okay, now looks better. Okay then. Alright. So the form element is a container of all the content of the form, including some number of form controls such as text entry field and buttons. It may also contain block elements H1P. Okay. However, it may not contain another form. Okay, tip: be careful not to nest forms or allow them to overlap. A form element must be closed before the next one begins. Okay, so right. There we go. This sample source document contains a form similar to the one shown. Okay, start with this title, meta set, and body, mail listing form, action equals PHP method post, field set, legend, list, label for, label, input type, text, name, username, ID. Okay. ID first, last, the email. Okay, field set, something to do with the field set. Okay. In addition to being a container for form control elements, the form element has some attributes that are necessary for interacting with the form processing program on the server. Okay. The action attribute. The action attribute provides the location URL of the application or script, sometimes called the action page, that will be used to process the form. Okay. The action attribute in this example sends the data to a script called mailinglist.php. Right. The PHP suffix indicates that this form is processed by a script written in the PHP scripting language, but web forms may be processed using one of the following. Okay, ASP, Ruby on Rails, okay. Java Server Pages, JSP, okay. There are other forms processing options that may have their own suffixes or none at all, as in the case of Ruby on Rails platform. Check with the programmer, server administrator, or script documentation for the proper name and location of the program to be provided by the action attribute. Sometimes there is form processing code such as PHP embedded right in the HTML file. In that case, leave the action empty and the form will अरे well, let's see. Getting your forms to work. If you aren't a programmer, don't fret. You have a few options for getting your forms operational using hosting plan goodies. Many site hosting plans include access to script for simple functions such as mailing list. More advanced plans may even provide everything you need to add a full shopping cart system to your site as part of your monthly hosting fee. Documentation or a technical support person should be available to help you use them. Hire a programmer. If you need a custom solution, you may need to hire a programmer who has server-side programming skills. Tell your programmer what you are looking to accomplish with your form, and he or she will suggest a solution. Again, you need to make sure you have permission to install scripts on your server under your current hosting plan and that the server supports the language you choose. Okay. The method attribute. The method attribute. Where is the method used? Okay, method. Okay, here. The method attribute specifies how the information should be sent to the server. Let's use this gathered. Let's use this gathered from. Let's use this data gathered from the sample. Username, yeah. When the browser encodes that information for its trip to the server, it looks like this. There are only two methods for sending this encoded data to the server. Get indicated using method attribute in the method is optional and will default to get if omitted. We'll look at the difference between the two methods in the following sections. Our example uses post method shown here. The post method. When the forms method is set to post, the browser sends a separate server request containing some special header followed by the data. Only the server sees the content of this request, thus it is the best for sending secure information. Okay, nice. The post method is also preferable for sending a lot of data, such as a lengthy text entry, because there is no character limit as there is for get. Nice, the get method. With the get method, the encoded form data gets tagged right onto the URL sent to the server. Question mark character separates the URL from the following data. Okay. The get method is appropriate if you want users to be able to bookmark the results of a form submission. Alright. Because the content of the form is in plain sight. Get is not appropriate for forms with private, personal, or financial information. In addition, get may not be used when the form is used to upload a file. In this chapter, we'll stick to the more prevalent post method. Now that we've gotten through the technical aspects of the form, we can take on real meat of forms, form controls, variables and content. Web forms use a variety of controls that allow users to enter information or choose options. Control types include various text entry fields, buttons, menus, and a few controls with special functions. They are added to the document using a collection of form control elements that will be examining one by one in the upcoming Great Form Control Rhino section. As a web designer, let me see, is it centered? Okay, better. As a web designer, it is important to be familiar with control options to make your form easy and intuitive to use. It is also useful to have an idea of what form controls are doing behind the scene. The name attribute. The job of a form control is to collect one bit of information from a user. In this example, in the form example a few pages back, text entry fields collect the visitor's name and email address. To use the technical term, username and email are two variables collected by the form. The data entered by the user Sally Strongarm and Strongarm at example.com is the value or content of the variable. The name attribute provides the variable name for the control. In this example, the text gathered by the text area element is defined as comment variable. Comment as in how? If there is the comment variable text area. When a user enters a comment in the field, this is the best band ever. This would be passed to the server as the name value variable pair like this. This is the ever. Okay. All form control elements must include a name attribute so the form processing application can sort the information. You may include a name attribute for submit and reset button elements, but they are not required because they have special functions, submitting or resetting the form, not related to data collection. Okay, naming your variables. You can't just name controls willy-nilly. The web application that processes the data is programmed to look for specific variable names. Okay. If you're designing a form to work with pre-existing application or script, you need to find out the specific variable names to use in the forms so they are speaking the same language. You can get the variable names from the developer you are working with, your system administrator, or from the instruction provided with the ready-to-use script on your server. If the script or application will be created later, be sure to name your variables simply and descriptively and to document them well. In addition, each variable must be named uniquely. That is, the same name may not be used for two variables. You should also avoid putting character spaces between variable names. Use an underscore or hyphen instead. Okay. We've covered the basics of the form element and how the variables are named. Now we can get to real meat of the form markup, the controls. She really liked meats for some reason, I don't know. Right. The great form control roundup. This is the fun part. Forms. Nice. This is the fun part, playing with the markup that adds form control to the page. This section introduces the elements used to create text entry control, specialized text entry controls, submit and reset buttons, radio and checkbox buttons, pull down and scrolling menus, file selection and upload control, hidden control, dates and times, numerical controls, color picker control. Okay. We'll pause along the way to allow you to try them out by constructing the questionnaire form shown in figure. Okay, great. As you will see, the majority of controls are added. To a form using the input element. Okay. The functionality and appearance of the input element changes based on the value of type attribute in the tag. Okay, I didn't read. Yeah, the post and get are not case sensitive and are commonly listed in all uppercase by convention. In XHTML document, however, the value of the method attribute post or get must be provided in all lowercase. Okay. XHTML. In HTML5 there are 23 different types of input controls. We'll take a look at them all. Nice. Text entry controls. One of the most common tasks. One of the most common tasks in a One of the most common tasks in a web form is to enter text information. Which element you use depends on whether users are asked to enter a single line of text or multiple lines. Okay. Note the markup example throughout the section include the label element, which is used to improve accessibility. We will discuss label in more detail from accessibility. But in time, I want you to get used to seeing proper form markup. Okay. So input single line text field. One of the most straightforward form input. One of the most straightforward form input types is the text entry field used for entering a single input. In fact, it is the default input type, which means it is what you'll get if you forget to include the type attribute or include an unrecognized value. Add an input text field to a form with the input element with its type set to text as shown here. Okay. So we get input type name ID type text name city form. Okay, ID form city. There are few attributes and I'd like to point out name. The name attribute is required for indicating the variable name. The value attribute specifies the default text that appears in the field. Okay. When you reset form, it returns to this value. Okay, max length by default user can type an unlimited number of characters in a text field regardless of its size. The display scroll to the right as the text exceeds the character width of the box. You can set the maximum character limit requires it. Okay. City, your hometown. Okay, multi-line text entry field. At times you'll want your user to be able to enter more than just one line of text. For these instances, use a text area element that is replaced by a multi-line scrollable text. Oh, scrollable. The specific rendering style of form controls varies by operating system and browser version. Okay. Unlike the empty input element, you can put content between the opening and closing tag in the text area element. The content of the text area element will show up in the text box when the form is displayed in the browser. It will also get sent to the server when the form is submitted, so carefully consider what goes there. Ooh. It is not uncommon for developers to put nothing between the opening and closing tags and provide a hint of what should go there with the title or placeholder attribute instead. The new HTML5 placeholder attribute can be used with the text area and other text-based input types, and is used to provide a short hint of how to fill. It is not supported on Android, older version of Firefox, and okay, we label official contest entry. Tell us why you love the band. Five winners. Text area name, rows, columns. The band is totally awesome. Okay. Placeholder 50 words or less. Entry. The rows and column attributes are a way of specifying the size of the text area using markup, but it is more commonly sized with CSS. The row specifies the number of lines the text area should display, and column specifies the width in the number of characters. Scroll bars will be provided if the user types more text than fits in the allotted space. There are also a few attributes placeholder. Like the band is totally awesome. Okay, 50 words or less. There are also a few attributes not shown in the example. The wrap attribute specifies whether the text should keep its line breaks when submitted. A value of soft, the default, does not preserve the line breaks, the hard does. The max length attribute, new in HTML5, sets a limit on the number of characters that can be typed into the field. Okay. We have disabled and read only. Okay. The disabled and read only attributes can be added to any form control element to prevent users from selecting them. When a form element is disabled, it cannot be selected. Visual browsers may render the control as grayed out by default, which you can change with the disabled state can only be changed with the script. This is a useful attribute for restricting access to some form fields based on data entered earlier in the form. The read-only attribute prevents the user from changing the value of the form control, although it can be selected. This enables developers to use scripts to set values for controls contingent. What does contingent mean? Subject to chance. Okay. This enables developers to use scripts to set values for controls contingent on another data entered earlier in the forms. Inputs that are read only should have strong visual cues. Inputs that are read only should have strong visual cues that they are somehow different than other inputs, or they could be confusing to users who are trying to change their values. Warning: iOS ignores disabled on option. Okay, we have specialized text entry fields. In addition to the generic single-line text entry, there are a number of input types for entering specific types of information such as passwords, search terms, email addresses, telephone numbers, and URLs. Password entry fields. Input type equals password. A password field works just like a text entry field, except the characters are obscured from view using asterisk or bullet character or another character determined by the browser. It's important to note that although the characters entered in the password field are not visible to casual onlookers, the form does not encrypt the information, so it should not be considered a real security measure. Here is an example. For the markup of a password field. Label for login label type password. Okay. Max length 8 ID. HTML5 text inputs. Okay. Until HTML5, the only way to collect email addresses, telephone numbers, URLs, or search terms was to insert a generic text input field. In HTML5, the email, tel, URL, and such inputs types give the browser a heads up as to what type of information to expect in the field. Okay, search field, email address, telephone number, URL. These new input types uses the same attributes as the generic text input types described earlier, name, max length. All of these input types are typically displayed as a single line text inputs, but browsers that support them can do some interesting things with the extra semantic information. For example, Safari on iOS uses the input type to provide a keyboard well suited to the entry task, such as the keyboard features, such as a keyboard featuring a search button. For the search input type or .com button, when the input is used as URL. Okay. Browsers usually add a one-click clear field icon, usually in the search field. A supporting browser could check the user's input to see that it is valid, such as making sure text entered is an email. Input follows standard email address structure. In the past, you needed JavaScript for validation, for example, the Opera and Chrome browser display a warning if the input does not match the expected format. Ooh. Not all browsers support new HTML5 input types or support them in the same way, but the good news is that if the type isn't recognized, the default generic text input is displayed instead, which works perfectly fine. There is no reason not to start using them right away as a progressive enhancement, even if you can't reap the benefits of easy user and browser validation. Okay. At the rate, search bar, telephone. Ooh, okay, so that's how they do that. Ooh, nice. Good. Please enter a valid email address. Okay, the data list element. The data list element, new in HTML5, allows the author to provide a drop-down menu of suggested values for any type of text input. Nice. It gives the user some shortcuts to select from, but if none are selected, the user can still type in her own text. That's cool. That's cool. Within the data list element, suggested values are marked up as option element. Use the list attribute in the input element to associate it with the ID of its respective data list. Okay. For input list ID level. Oh. In the following, a data list suggests several education levels. As of this data list ID. Okay. As of this writing, only the Opera browser has implemented the data list element. Other browsers will ignore it and present a simple text input, which is perfectly acceptable fallback. You could also use JavaScript to create data list functionality. It's polyfill. Okay. Submit and reset buttons. Type submit and type reset. There are several different kinds of buttons that can be added to web forms. The most fundamental is the submit button. When clicked or tapped, the submit button immediately sends the collected form data to server for processing. A reset button returns. Okay, hold up. Okay, boys, we're back. There are several different kinds of buttons that can be added to web forms. The most fundamental is the submit button. When clicked or tapped, the submit button sends a collected form data to the server for processing. A reset button returns the form controls to the state they were in when the form initially loaded. In other words, resetting the form doesn't simply clear all the fields. Both submit and reset buttons are added using the input element. Okay. As mentioned earlier, because these buttons have specific functions that do not include the entry of data, they are the only form control elements that do not require a name. Although it is okay to add one if you need it. Submit and Submit. Submit and reset buttons are straightforward to use. Just place them in the appropriate place in the form, which in most cases is at the very end. Okay. By default, the submit button displays the label submit or submit query, and the reset button is labeled submit value. Change the text on the button using the value attribute. The reset button is not used in the forms as commonly as it is used to be. That is because in contemporary form development we use JavaScript to check the validity of form inputs along the way, so the users get feedback as they go along. Okay. With thoughtful design and assistance, fewer users should get to the end of the form and need to reset the whole thing. Still, it is a good function to be aware of. At this point, you know enough about the markup to start building the questionnaire shown in figure 9, exercise 9.1. Okay, first I will go through this. A few more buttons. There are a handful of custom button elements that are a little off the beaten path for beginners, but in the interest of thoroughness, here they are tucked off in a sidebar. Image buttons. This type of input controls allows you to replace the submit button with an image of your choice. Nice. The image button will appear flat, not like a 3D button, unfortunately. Fortunately, this type of button has accessibility issues, so be sure to alt value. Custom input button. Setting the type of input element to button creates a button that can be customized with JavaScript. Nice. It has no predefined function on its own, unlike submit and reset button. The button element. The button element is a flexible element for creating custom buttons similar to those created with the input element. The content of the button element, text or image, is what gets displayed. For more information on what you can do with button, starting the context. Okay, here's a scenario. You are the web designer in charge of creating the entry form for the force field sneakers Pimp My Shoes contest. The copy editor has handed you a sketch of the form's content, complete with notes of how some controls should work. Okay. There are sticky notes from the programmer with information about the script and variables names you need to use. Your challenge is to turn the sketch into a functional online form. I've given you a head start by creating a bare bones document containing the text, content, and some minimal markup. Okay, this document entry contest_entry.html is available here. The source of the entire finished form is so I have to create this, and it should be exercise material chapter 9. Okay, here we go. Copy. Chapter 9 forms. I think that is the name. Yep, chapter 9 forms. Then exercise 9.1, and I paste it. Okay. Then I have to add. Okay. Okay. So by default, what does it show? Okay, so I need to add input contest entry form. Okay, this form should be sent to learning web design underscore via the post method. Name the text fields name, email, phone and story respectively. Okay, so I want to add a text field here. Input type equals text, then I'll say name equals name, right, and that is all. I think that should be all. Yeah, okay, great. So I have this name. That is how you create input, right? Input type name, then I don't have to get the ID. So then I have name, email, and this will be text area. No more than add placeholder text no more than 300 characters long. Okay, so I will add another input with type text, then name, email, and that should be it. Name, email, type equals text and name equals phone. Perfect. And then my shoes are so old. List element. And do I create another list element or do I embed it here? Text area type equals, do I even have to specify type? Text for text area, password text area. Okay, name, just the name and placeholder. Okay, so we just provide the text area name story and then placeholder equals, what is the placeholder here? The placeholder here is no more than 300 characters long. No more than 300 characters long. And this text area, like, it is not a single, right? It needs to be, yeah, okay. It has to be terminated. So let me take a look. Yeah, specific email address. This, I think this should be a new list element. Post. Okay, I have to add the action on the contest entry form. I should add the form. Where is the form? Start with the form, right? Form and action. Okay, start with a form. Action equals and action. Then we have method, post, right. Then I end my form here, form, action, leave it empty, right. Okay, should not really make any difference still. Okay, this is not looking right. Hmm. Name the controls in the section color, features, and size respectively. Note that the brackets after features are required in order for the script to process it correctly. Okay. I don't know how to use checkboxes, right? It didn't show me how to make checkboxes. Did you? Have I skipped over them completely? I don't think so. Password text area. Yeah. How do we use checkboxes? Hmm. Email, phone. Then let me make it big. Like rows are expanded for 4 rows and 300 characters. No. Okay. So I'll go with row equals 4, column equals 50. No. Okay. Hold up. Text area. Rows and calls. Okay. Rows, calls. Okay. Better. Contest entry. I have added this. Then I have no idea how to put a image button, input button. Yeah. Call 60. Okay. Input. Until we. Okay. So open form in this. Right. In this exercise will work on the contest entry form section of the form. Start with the first 3 short text entries. And that now add a multi-line text area. Okay, with the BR, right? I didn't have to. That's what I thought. Yeah. I didn't have to. I can just add a line break here. And add this. And call 60. Okay. 60. Max length equals 300. Okay, I also have to provide max length. Right. I can basically provide it anyway, right? Right here. max length equals 300 characters. Okay. We'll skip the rest of the form for now until we get a few more controls under our belt. But we can add the submit and reset buttons at the end. The form. Okay. Will you pimp my shoes? Input type reset. Okay, so we can add at the end of the form in the paragraph input type submit value pimp my shoes, then we add another input, right, input type reset. We close the paragraph. So let's see. Now save the document and open it in the browser. The parts that are finished should generally match figure 9.3. You have some more work to do. Radio, yeah, radio and checkboxes. That was figure 9.3. I think mine pimp my shoes. Wow, didn't show. Shows regular flat, but that is sold. Okay, then we move ahead. We should see a response. Okay. Radio and checkbox buttons. Both checkbox and radio buttons make it simple for visitors to choose from a number of provided options. They are similar in that they function like little on-off switches that can be toggled by the user and are added using the input element. They serve distinct functions, however. A form control made up of a collection of radio buttons is appropriate when only one option of the group is permitted. In other words, when the selections are mutually exclusive, such as yes or no, male or female, when one radio button is on, all the other must be off. Sort of the way buttons used to old radios. Press one button in and rest pop out. Okay. When checkboxes are grouped together, however, it is possible to select as many or as few from the group as desired. This makes them the right choice for lists in which more than one selection is okay. Right. Radio buttons. Radio buttons, type radio. Radio buttons are added to a form using the input element with the type radio attribute with the types attribute set to radio. Here is the syntax for a minimal radio button. Input type equals radio, name variable value. Okay. Value under 24 checked. Under 24. The name attribute is required and plays an important role in building multiple radio inputs into set. When you give a number of radio inputs the same name value, they create a group of mutually exclusive options. Okay. In this example, the radio buttons are used as an interface for user to enter their age group. A person can't belong to more than one age group, so radio buttons are the right choice. Notice that all of the input elements have the same variable age, but their values are different. Because these are radio buttons, only one button can be checked at a time, and therefore only one value will be sent to the server for processing when the form is submitted. Okay, value. Okay, there was some note, I think. I have omitted the field set and label element from the code examples for radio buttons, checkboxes, and menus in order to keep the markup structure as simple and clear as possible. In the upcoming form accessibility feature section, you will learn why it is important to include the menu markup for all forms elements. Okay. Then checked. Okay, checked is a. I think checked is the default value. You can decide which button is checked in when the form loads by adding the checked attribute to the input element. Okay. Note: HTML syntax. The value of the checked attribute must be explicitly set to checked as shown in the example. Okay. But in HTML syntax, you don't need to write out the value for the checked attribute. It can be minimized as shown here. Checked. Okay, checkboxes. How old are you? Yeah. Okay, checkbox buttons. Input type checkbox. Oh, by checkboxes are added using the input element. Checkboxes are added using the input element with its type set to checkbox. As with radio buttons, you create groups of checkboxes by assigning them the same name value. Okay. Checkbox. The difference, as we've already noted, is that more than one checkbox may be checked at a time. The value of every checked button will be sent to the server when the form is submitted. Here is an example. Okay. Checkboxes don't necessarily need to be used in groups. Groups, of course. In this example, a single checkbox is used to allow visitors to opt in for special promotions. The value of the control will be passed along to the server only if the user checks. Okay. Name opt-in value. Yes. Send me. Hip hop. Okay. Send me new. You'll get a chance to add both radio. Okay. So we can now go exercise 9.2 and we copy this, paste it here, close it from here and here, and let's open it again. And now I'm going to add checkboxes. Okay, red. Hold up. Choose one, right? Okay, so the value is here. Let's okay. Input radio. Input type radio. Name. What is the name? In this section, color and features. Okay, color. So color is the name, and size. After features are required. Okay. So it has to go to color, right? And then I don't think I need anything else. And value. Okay. Name and value. Red. I don't need to write. Okay. Then I can do the same here. Type equals radio. Name belongs to color. Value equals blue, and this is blue. Black. and then we have silver. Silver. Okay, let me see. Okay, looks good. Looks good. Right. Okay, choose one. Red. Right. Okay, then I have to add checkboxes here. So let's add checkboxes here. But type checkbox is features with a small f. Okay. Features. Then value for sparkly list. Right, that's how they work. Value indeed checked. Okay, checked is an attribute I can provide by default. I will put checked here. Checked. Okay. Then we'll go. Should provide a little space here. Input checkbox name features metallic logo. Then I have input type checkbox name features value equals light up hues. MP3 enabled. Put type equals checkbox features value equal MP3 enabled. Let's see. We have multiple. Okay, great. Value red. Okay, that's okay, doesn't matter. But mark up the features options as you did color options, but this time the type should be checkbox. Be sure the variables. Save the document by opening in browser. Make sure it's doing properly. Okay. Then we have menus. Select option. Another way to provide a list of choices is to put them in a drop-down menu or scrolling menu. Menus tend to be more compact than groups of buttons and checkboxes. You add both drop-down and scrolling menus to form with the select element. Whether the menu pulls down or scrolls is a result of how you specify its size and whether you allow more than one option to be selected. Okay, drop down menus. Okay, the select element option. The select element displays. What is the time here? Ooh, I'm over an hour. Okay, how much is I've dropped down menus? Menu file selection control. Okay, I'll cover it later.